Does doing work sound like a drag to you? I mean, there's probably a good reason for that, but it's too bad because work is, in fact, one of the most fulfilling and rewarding things you can do. Think about what happens when you do work. Imagine you're in your backyard and you're going to build a little plant box and you're going to plant a little garden in it. What's going to happen? You're going to hammer those pieces of wood together. You're going to work around in the dirt. You're going to put the seeds in. Later, you're going to water the garden and all that sort of stuff. Maybe you're going to call on your friend to help you hold the pieces of wood together while you glue it or something like that. Or maybe you're going to get your friend to help you carry it. Maybe you're going to ask them for advice. When you work in situations like that, you use your body. You work with materials, the wood, the nails, the hammer. You work with natural stuff like the earth, water, plants, seeds. You interact with other people. They help you. You help them. You do things that require cooperative effort. You talk. Right? Work is the way you get to know your body. It's the way you get to know the things in the world. It's the way you develop meaningful interactions with other people. And in doing that, you learn about your powers. You learn about what you can do. You learn about what wood and dirt can do. Right? And you also make things that afterwards you think, hey, that's mine, I did that. And you're sort of proud of yourself. Every time you go out and see that plant box, or every time you go out and see that plant, you see a kind of reflection of yourself and you think, oh, that's my accomplishment. Right? So work is generally a very fulfilling way that we turn to our environment, meaningfully interact with it, produce a better situation for ourselves, right? We make the things we want, so we make a nice environment for ourselves, and we learn things, we elevate our self-esteem and all the rest of that, right? Generally, work is the way we make ourselves at home in our bodies, in materials, in the world, and so on. So why does work seem like a drag? Well, the answer is really quite simple. According to Marx, it's wage labor. When you think of work, probably you're thinking of, going to work at Tim Hortons or McDonald's or wherever you have a job. You're going to work, you're going to do something that somebody else tells you to do that you have no real interest in or involvement in, and you're going to do it and all the other things that go along with that day. You're going to do it because you're trying to get that paycheck at the end, right? That's what it's about for you. So Marx says, when we do this wage labor in contemporary society, that thing we're doing is pretty much the opposite of what I was describing when I talked about making that box in the garden. The work you do for a job, for a wage in contemporary industrial technological society is usually work where you don't do a rich and full meaningful task. You do some particular little bit that somebody told you to do. So you're not really involved meaningfully in a whole process. You're doing this thing that's isolated and alien, right? Often you're gonna sit at a desk or punch keys on something like that, right? You don't do stuff that really develops you in relationship to your body. In fact, you may have to put your body in uncomfortable situations all day. If you're working in a Ford assembly plant for cars, you might have to stand in more or less the same position, drilling the same 6 bolts in the door frame every day or something. Like, put yourself in weird physical situations that would never really naturally come up. And if you're working in a factory, if you're working in an office, you're not getting out in the natural world and learning how to interact with dirt and sun and figure out how plants grow, right? You're actually doing things that keep you away from the world of nature. And, you might very well be working in your own little cubicle or in your own little assembly spot. Or, you might be interacting with people by talking on the phone and trying to sell them stuff, but that's not a very nice way to interact with people, right? The work is also going to separate you from all these other people. So Marx says that in contemporary industrial technological society, labor for most people is alienating and alienated. In the work you do, you don't develop a rich and full relationship to your body. You actually have to kind of alienate yourself from your body. You don't develop a rich and full relationship to other people. You have to kind of alienate yourself from them. You're alienated from nature, and you're also alienated from that product, right? You're not making something for yourself. You're making something for somebody else, and you never really you don't get to enjoy it. You never really see what it is. So you're alienated from the process and the product of manufacture. And then what do you get at the end? You get a wage. But what are you going to do with that wage? Probably you're going to have to go out and spend it on entertainments to sort of wash the bad taste out of your mouth, right? To do something fun to get rid of the awful feeling you had about what you had to do at work. So those things that are entertainments, it's not so much that they are intrinsically fulfilling and rewarding. It's more like the cheap fix you need that's just sort of the counterpart of the nasty thing you had to do for work. So, like I said, work is in fact intrinsically extremely rewarding. But the problem with contemporary capitalist technological society is that it makes most of us wage laborers. And for that reason, work for us, instead of being the most fulfilling thing, becomes the most alienating thing.